Hello, this is Robert. Today we're flying a drone. Right now we're over Highway 213. We're going to look at the areas that we just sold to be cut. Laura's house is right there in the lower left-hand corner. We're passing through the field out between Laura and Shaw's old house. The trees there on the right are down the property line. This is the way that the trucks would go in and out to harvest the timber. So you see the clear cut from last year after the hurricane when we sold a bunch of poles. That will be replanting this year. Right now we're crossing over the top of the first power line, and like I said, the clear cut to the left. To the right there is a patch of trees that we planted about 20 years ago. They've been thinned once. We will be doing something with those here before too long, probably a second thinning at the 23 to 25 year range. So our road turns left through the clear cut. Things look fairly level, but this is up and down. These trucks are gonna have a struggle to get back in here. Right now we're coming up on the second power line. You see the tower right there in the center of the picture. And we're flying into an area that we cut about 10 years ago and replanted about 8 years ago. And once again, this is heading down. Even though it looks completely flat, we're kind of heading downhill at this point. The line of trees that you see there sort of across the middle, that's the Mill Creek. And we're fixing to go over the bridge to nowhere in just a moment. You really won't be able to see it because there's trees all around the creek, and that's what's known as the streamside management zone in order to shade the creek. So there's a steep hill there in front of us. The clear cut there to the right is back, we did that right when COVID started, and it's been replanted, and those trees are up 6 to 8 feet in most cases. So right now we're looking straight down at the bridge to nowhere. And if you look real close, you might see the glint of water somewhere, but probably not. So right there starts the beginning of this 40-acre tract that we are getting ready to sell here. We have two 40-acre tracts and another one about 17 acres. That's a quick look at the area that we planted. Notice the rows. The fellows did pretty good because that is all planted by hand. A crew planted about over 100 acres in one day. So on the left there are some trees. They are at about the age of, let's see, they were planted in 93, so we're looking at about 32 years, which makes them economically mature. If you look down, there's not a lot of room between the tops. So when the crowns close, the trees go up a little bit more, but more importantly, there's not light getting in, and the trees slow their growth rate down very much. So over there to the right is another person's property. Behind us, we're still over the top of our property on Young Park, and if you notice there in the front, there's another part of a clear cut that we cut back right at the beginning of COVID. If you look closely, you can see some of the rows of trees where they were planted again. And once again, that's a fairly hilly area. It really appears to be flat when you're up at about 400 feet. So now we're looking down where the road came out of the first 40-acre tract. It goes up a hill and down a hill. That big open area is where they gathered dirt to put in another pipe across a low spot. The road goes up and terminates at a corner. So the big trees right there on the right are not ours. That's on another property. The line goes up almost by that road and then turns and goes into the trees right about the center there. You notice the difference between the trees on the right and then the pine plantation. The hole out in the middle of that 40-acre tract is where there was a logging deck back when this was thinned some time ago, when we could still actually get out through the landowner behind us. So now we're coming over an area of Mill Creek where the beavers have killed everything. The straight lines that you see are more trees that were planted several years ago, 3 to 4 years, probably 4 years, I guess. A lot of them are growing very well. They're up at the 6 to 8, some 10 foot. So we're taking a quick look at land that the beavers have backed up water on. They have backed it up for so long that all of the trees have died and collapsed, and nothing is growing because it's flooded. Pesky little beavers. They probably cost us 30 or 40 acres of land. We'll see in a second. So looking dead ahead, you'll see sort of an L there in the upper left-hand corner. Darker trees. That's the mile field, what they used to call the mile field, because it was a mile away from the house, to give you a little bit of perspective on how large this piece of property is. And that is about 17 acres, and those trees, we hadn't been able to get them cut because we have to go out through the fellow behind us to get them, and they're about 40 years old. So they're the farthest away and the most difficult to deal with, but hopefully we'll get them cut this time, get them replanted, and move on. So now we're turning again to look at some of the damage that the beavers have done. And as you see, there's just dead stems all over the place. This is standing water, and this was taken in early July, so there's not a lot of extra water floating around in early July, so the beavers have backed up some areas. The areas that you see that are more or less little tiny ponds, there's probably some beaver dams in there that the beavers might not even be tending to anymore. They just built dams, and then vegetation grew up on the dams and caused those to remain. The only way we could ever get out there and tear that apart is if we had heavy equipment, track hose and such. But if you see where the large muddy spots are where the creek usually flows, it flows very quickly and through many channels in this area because it's kind of flat. Shaw Park, who used to live next door to us, worked for the soil conservation folks back in the 70s, and at the other end of Mill Creek, near Little River, they actually dynamited about a mile of that in order to force that creek to go into one channel and drain those swamps. And of course we know that that's not a practice that would be done these days. We're heading back over the second power line. Over to the right is the outflow from the old pond, so that area is kind of low and wet, always has been. But still, you're seeing the dead tops of these hardwoods as we fly along here. The gray trees are all dead and will be coming down before too long. There's really no pines in there to speak of. It's just too wet. And as you see, there's water under all of this. The trees just are able to get enough oxygen to the root systems, but they won't last forever in there. And of course, we're coming up on another area that the beavers have done a number on. And you see the big pond there, and how that there's no trees left at all because it's been flooded for so long. And eventually, another reason why this area is flooded so is when they blew the creek out, it washed into one channel all the way up to the point where our ancestors had built a ford going across the creek. And that ford was made of some really big rocks, and it stopped washing as soon as it hit those rocks. Now there's sort of a little waterfall over those rocks. It's a few feet, but it is blocking the movement. If we could move those out, the rest of the creek might blow out. We might have some more success. So now we're back to the point where we crossed the creek a few minutes ago, and we are looking at the log road again, and where it heads up the hill, where those log trucks go out. And once again, the clear cut ahead is the clear cut that the area that we clear cut last year. And if you'll notice, there are some areas out in the middle of it of big trees. That's a very large and very steep area. And then there are some pines out in there that they were just not able to get the equipment to. There's gullies and such everywhere. and they no longer use chainsaws. The insurers will not cover them if they pick up a chainsaw, but you can see the front power line in the top and the second power line there in the bottom area. We will be replanting this. It's 44 acres this coming winter. Hoping to use some seeds, some plants that are not genetically modified, but they have been selected as good performing plants. They were a little bit more expensive, and we'll cover that a little bit more later. Several of us have been to some of these presentations where they have the plants. So right now, we're just ending this flight, and we're heading back down to my truck, and we'll see that come into view in a second. It is kind of funny how this thing will just fly right back to its spot and land automatically and shut down. And here we go. Okay, thanks for watching. We'll do some other things later. They're much easier to explain from the air.